recording this meeting. And so just real quick, these meetings are recorded and shared with Trellis Network members after. So we'll be using Chatham House rule. Whatever you learn here, just don't mention anybody's name or organizations, but take the information with you when you leave. Please turn on your camera if you can, especially if you have questions or if we're in a discussion. Would love to see your faces. If you haven't yet done so, if you could add your affiliation in your Zoom profile, that would be great. And feel free to chime in anytime. These are pretty casual conversations. For today, I'm super excited to welcome some guest experts from TNFD, who I'll introduce in a second. But they're going to be talking a little bit about kind of what has TNFD been up to since the launch that was just not too long ago, a year and a half, is that right? Year and a half, almost 2 years. But they've done a lot since then, and they're also thinking about next steps. And we just really wanted to take this moment to kind of recalibrate, update you all on this. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Reese, you should be able to share your screen. And I'll introduce Reese and Krista from TNFD if you guys want to give a quick intro to who you are. And I'll
Sure.
let you take
Thank
it
you so
away.
much. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. My name is Krista Gannell. I'm the market engagement lead for the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures. My jurisdiction is North America, so I cover Canada, US, Mexico. And I'm joined by my colleague today, Reese Thomas, who is the TNFD Senior Communications and Content Manager. We're happy to be here with you today. And we want to share with you, like Alex said, what the TNFD has been up to since our launch of our recommendations in September of 2023. So we have accomplished a lot in that short amount of time and happy to share it with you. So I know we only have 30 minutes today, so we really want this to be an open conversation, kind of less of a presentation, but more of an open forum. So you can share your experiences and we can just really have a conversation. So I really want to ask three important questions that you can think about while Reese is presenting today. The first of which is, what is your experience with integrating nature and the TNFD within your firms? What challenges have you faced with that integration, right? And how the TNFD can support you, right? But really, most importantly, I think, how do we keep the US on track given all the market volatility right now and a fairly disruptive political headwinds right now? So with that, I'm going to turn over the mic to Reese to present, and looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks so much, Krista, and great to be here. So I'm going to whiz through these slides because Alex will provide these at the end, and you're more than welcome to share them with the group afterwards as well. So there's a couple of slides in here which are more for kind of, as an FYI, and you can take away and share them with your teams. But here's just a bit of a recap. Obviously, since September, our mission has slightly shifted. We talk about it in two phases. We're in phase 2 at the moment. Our overall mission of kind of shifting financial flows towards nature positive outcomes is the same. How we do that has kind of evolved over the last 18 months. So we're still a task force of 40. We're still obviously science-based with kind of world-leading scientific bodies and knowledge partners who underpin our guidance and our work, and we're still government-backed with the G7 and G20. And we'll be doing a lot of engagement with those groups over the course of this year as well. On the right-hand side, you can just see our task force made up of financial institutions, corporate service providers. We've had a little bit of change as we've moved over the past 18 months, but a lot of them have been here since the beginning. So just a little recap of where we are. For those who are not aware, we went through a very extensive 2-year iteration, open innovation iteration approach where we produced 4 beta guidance documents. We got, I think it was over 3,000 individual pieces of feedback, which then culminated in the recommendations document being published in September. But we haven't just published the recommendations, we've gone far beyond that. We've published a series of additional pieces of guidance across various different elements and core concepts, including the LEAP approach, which we would like to discuss briefly at the end. But also over the last 18 months, we've produced sector-specific guidance for the application of the LEAP approach, but also for the core disclosure metrics. We now have 13 pieces of sector guidance out, which actually cover over 50% of the SASB 6 industries. And we do have plans for a few more this year, but we can't do all 77 six industries over the next year. So we prioritized a series of sectors. That's all available online. We've also launched our adopter campaign in Davos last January. We had 320 early adopters announced. And just recently at COP16, over 500 organizations have now adopted. I can show you some more info on that later. So I talked about these two phases. The phase one was the disclosure recommendations, putting out the scenario guidance and the assessment guidance. We've published our data analytics tools catalog as well. So that's all available on the website. We have, I think, roughly 200 nature-related data tools available to the market now, listed on the tools catalog. And we've also published a series of discussion papers where we get iterative feedback as well. But what we're really focusing on at the moment are these pieces in blue. So transition planning, nature transition planning, building off the work of GFANZ and others in the climate transition planning space. As I said, that sector guidance piece, which will continue through this year. But what a massive focus of us this year is market engagement and capacity building, which we'll touch on later as well. And then finally, down there in the bottom, the Nature Data Public Facility. And this is a really big part of our work this year, then overcoming that nature data challenge and working on producing a roadmap for what could look like a Nature Data Public Facility. I also wanted to just highlight a couple of points here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we're really seeing the uptake, even as Chris said, with the headwinds, the political headwinds, and some other geopolitical things going on in the world. We're seeing a huge uptake. We're seeing investor demand grow. We're seeing major asset managers call for companies to start disclosing this information aligned with the TNFD. So here's just some examples of the progress that's being made, not by us, but by others, based on a lot of our recommendations and just the general progress in nature-related reporting. As I said, at COP26, we announced 502 TNFD adopters. They have a combined market cap of 6.5 trillion, and in terms of the financial institutions, 17.7 trillion assets under management. We cover 62 of the 77 six sectors in terms of our adopters. And of that, 30% of our adopters are actually listed in the MSCI World Index as well. And we have 25% of the globally systemic important banks who have signaled their intent to use the TNFD recommendations and start disclosing. So it's a good snapshot of kind of the breakdown of organizations across the world. Since September, we've also produced a number of guidance. As I said, this pyramid shows everything that kind of builds up into the TNFD recommendations. So under the recommendations, we've produced guidance on how to get started, a series of interoperability mapping with the ESRS Foundation, which obviously feeds into the CSRD, which I'm sure many of you are keen to talk about. But we've also published biome guidance and sector-specific guidance, as well as a series of additional guidance there at the bottom as well. So I just wanted to go over this and show you, there is a lot to get started with. We have provided a lot of the tools and the information to get started with at least a LEAP assessment, but also to get started with that TNFD aligned disclosures as well. I wanted to point out the interoperability mapping. This is, again, a key focus of our work this year. We'll continue to work with a number of international standard setters and regulatory bodies. The two main pieces that we've published so far is the mapping with the GRI standards and the use of correspondence tables. We're trying to minimize the duplication that you need to do. So if you do report on GRI and aspects of the GRI, you can become an adopter today. You already, in most instances, are very much aligned with a lot of the TNFD recommended disclosures and the metrics and indicators that feed into those as well. And we've also got the ESRS the CSRD mapping published as well. And this year we continue to work with the ISSB as they develop their BEES, their biodiversity ecosystems and ecosystem services work towards a potential nature standard in the future. We actually presented to their board only a couple of weeks ago. I just wanted to also touch on the capacity side, which is a big focus of mine. So I do support and lead on a lot of the capacity building work, a lot of the tools that we develop. And I wanted to point everyone in the direction of the Knowledge Hub. If you don't know already, we have a huge space on our website called the Knowledge Hub, and this is where anything to do with learning and education, that's where we store everything. So our first piece is TNFD in a box. That's really if you're really early on in your internal kind of development or education, it's a really great resource to download and to actually use in workshops. It might be internal meetings, it might just be kind of building that awareness in teams internally, or even just for yourselves or individuals within the organization. It's a great series of downloadable PowerPoints essentially in really easy language, points you in the right direction of where to find things in the guidance, but it really is a great resource to get you up to speed with the recommendations and the wider kind of set of guidance that we've published. And then more recently, we've published two other tools, the Learning Lab and the Trainer Portal. The Learning Lab is for individuals, so anyone who's interested in upskilling and learning about nature-related issues. We've structured this Learning Lab around 9 modules. Which are broken down by our guidance. And this is really focusing on multimedia education. So lots of podcasts, lots of videos, all of our past webinars. And we're actually starting to record a series of lectures and kind of special conversations or in conversations with some of our partners. So the whole idea around that is that you can sit down, you can work through those modules at your own pace. You can track your progress and everything like that. So that's really for that kind of individual education, self-paced learning. Then you've got the Trainer Portal. It's a series of downloadable modules, white label material, I should say. And this is for education organizations. This is for universities. This is for trainers. And what we've done is provide all of this information, all of this content for free and without branding, so that organizations can download it and integrate it into their own curriculums and their own training. And the idea behind this is to really, how do we get training out there at the scale that the market is demanding? We can't teach everyone, so we're trying to train the trainers and get that embedded into existing courses. But then underneath this, we have our resource database. It has about 500 resources, other guidance that supports the TNFD and nature-related reporting. It has other podcasts and everything like that. So that's really a massive repository of learning information and other documents and reports, academic papers, etc. The webinar library, everything that we host and record, even our events are recorded and they're posted into the webinar library. And then the final two are really as something that we released last year, the case study library. We have about 50 case studies at the moment. We've got about 30 real world examples of how businesses are actually interpreting the guidance and then doing a leap approach. We find a lot of organizations are going there looking for examples in their sector or in their jurisdiction, in their country, and seeing just how others are getting started. It's always a good reference point. And then we also have case studies of kind of sector-based DIROs, so dependencies, impacts, risks, and opportunities. How do they manifest in real life? And also, if you're looking at kind of building the business case internally, it's a really great way to go and say, look, this is actually how it's culminating in reality for other organizations. And then finally, the TNFD example reports. We're finding this is extremely popular. I think we have about 50 listed at the moment. And this is examples of TNFD aligned reporting. I must say, these are illustrative examples. We don't endorse any of these reports. We do obviously check them to make sure they're at least one of the disclosures is in line with the TNFD, which is part in our guidance. That's how you can get started with one. We've got reports from all over the globe and in many different sectors. So do go and check those out. There's all links to those reports, and you can download them via the website. So I'm actually going to stop there. I do have a couple of slides just on the Learning Lab, which I'll let you go through in your own time, and of course the Trainer Portal. But then just to finish, many of you might be TNFD forum members already, but we do encourage you to join our forum. You get exclusive access to capacity building learning materials, invites to events, webinars, etc. But it also allows you to provide feedback via the website on anything that we've got open for consultation at the moment. So right now we've got draft guidance for 3 sectors: marine transportation, fishing, and water utilities. that we're looking for feedback from the market to help inform the final guidance, which will be published. So we do really encourage you to look at what becoming a forum member means, and joining the community, and staying up to date with everything that we put out throughout the year. And then finally, if you want to scan these, you can go straight to the landing pages, but we'll provide these in the email at the end as well. So I hope I didn't go through that too quickly, but as I said, we really want to leave some time for discussion. I think we've got about 11 minutes left.
Thanks so much, Reese. That's a lot of ground that you all have covered in the past few years, so awesome to see. Curious for the group also, if you could all be thinking, like, what could TNFD provide you at this point to make your jobs easier? Like, what are you looking for in this moment? And I'll let you think on that. Feel free to drop questions or thoughts in the chat box. But Julia, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll start out. I have two questions. One would be, has TNFD engaged with any of the globally acceptable forest certification standards around SFI, PEFC, or FSC?
Yeah, extensively, especially FSC. So the forest guidance, parts of the agriculture guidance that we've put out as well, they're all based on existing metrics and existing work that's already been done. There was a slide that I actually removed, but we like to think we've built on everything that has already been out there. We've coordinated it, and we're built on the Natural Capital Protocol from the Capitals Coalition, etc. So maybe I can add that slide in as well. But it shows you how TNFD is a puzzle where it's kind of put all these fragmented pieces together. So if you go and look at the guidance that is relevant to your organization, you'll see that all of the reference points and the other scientific work that we've built on is in there.
Okay. And then I'm really intrigued by your, what do you call it, nature data public facility. And because I think about I work for the forest sector, large forest landowners, and the amount of nature data that we have that nobody knows that we have, and how we can get that somewhere and get compensated for the collecting this around endangered species, plants, and all kinds of things that would probably want to be in a nature data public facility. So I don't know what your thoughts are about how this is all going to come together.
Yeah, and I think there's a big question, and maybe Chris, if you've got more to add to this, but I'm not a data expert, so I'm not going to go into the technical side. So at COP16, we published a discussion paper, which was outlining our proposal for a roadmap towards this public facility. We have been collecting feedback. The feedback just closed, actually, but we are going through a period of piloting. We've had hundreds of applications to join the piloting program. And that's everyone across the value chain, the data value chain, from end users to obviously data providers and that raw data as well. We're going to be pilot testing this throughout the next few months, and at COP30 later this year, we'll be publishing our final guidance on a roadmap for developing that. Now, what the TNFD's role in that is obviously one of those questions. But what we're looking to do is produce a roadmap for other entities to be able to take that and build what could be a public data facility for exactly what you're talking about.
Thanks,
I've
Reese.
just popped in the chat a link to our data page as well. You can find the discussion paper on there. We've also done a few webinars over the last few months, which I highly recommend you go and check out as well. It has a lot more technical information, which is something that I can't go into right now.
Yeah, and if you're interested in providing a bit of feedback on that discussion paper, I'm happy to connect with you and collect that feedback and share it with our data team.
Other folks have questions or thoughts about how you might be considering engaging with TNFD at this moment in time, or anything that would help make your jobs advancing nature strategies or nature finance a little easier. I've got a question. I've got a question for you all. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the nature transition planning piece that Reese you mentioned, especially like how are you seeing this actually play out on the on the ground right now? Are a lot of companies working towards nature transition plans? If so, like, are you seeing any patterns? Is it just integrating nature into existing climate transition plans? Just yeah, curious to get a big picture view of like the current state of nature transition planning.
Yeah, I can take that. So again, similarly to these are two big areas of work for us this year, and of interest to the market as well, obviously. We published a discussion paper at COP again, and I think we had over 100 pieces of formal feedback, which just closed as well. We're pilot testing at the moment. The discussion paper was we worked or we built on the work of GFAN, so exactly the same approach as you would take for your climate transition planning. We have built a framework around that approach. And the idea behind that was the feedback in the initial scoping and the discussions that we had was that is the easiest way to encourage organizations to be able to get started. We are seeing certain trends in organizations that are applying for, there are certain sectors that are far more better placed to start with transition planning. But we're also interestingly finding organizations would like to go straight in with a transition plan rather than potentially even before a LEAP assessment or as they're doing their LEAP assessment, which we found a little bit interesting in terms of the sequence of how they do. But I think transition planning is going to be a core element of our work this year. There's a lot more that I can share and I can link you to. And if you're interested in finding out more, again, we're going to be pilot testing the transition planning guidance and publishing our final guidance at COP30 later this year as well.
Great. I see Tatiana has a question, and just one follow-up for you first is what sectors are you saying that are better placed to start?
So we're finding the forestry-based and agriculture-based industries are very interested in transition planning and also being pushed from the financial institutions as well.
Go ahead, Tatiana.
Great, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. So I guess, so we became an early adopter, and so we're kind of on this journey now and you know, starting to do the LEAP assessment and things like that. And I guess I'm reflecting back to kind of, you know, a few years ago when we were starting doing a similar journey with the TCFD. And I just wanted to see if there's any advice maybe for folks on the call who, you know, have gone through that journey with TCFD, where we were kind of learning as we were doing. So we were kind of doing things like a scenario analysis, and then over time kind of building up some of our disclosures and understanding. So, you know, things like, you know, being able to focus on direct operations as opposed to going through the full value chain from day one, maybe building up appropriate metrics and targets over time. So I know we have these recommendations, but how would you recommend people for maybe their first year's report to kind of maybe dive in and encourage us to dive in, but maybe kind of go through a similar journey, you know, where you kind of build up a response similar to what a lot of us did from a TCFD perspective?
Yeah, I think I'll take that just to start, and Reese, you can add what you'd like. So a lot of folks that I'm finding, they like to focus on the low-hanging fruit, something that they're already probably focused on, and that's water consumption. We seem to see a lot of activity around water consumption, water use. Pollution is another. And other organizations are focusing in on certain sectors, if they're looking within their portfolios, for instance, or looking at some of their geographic focus. So I'm noticing that a lot of folks, they're doing a lot of this work already. It's just a matter of looking at it through the lens of a LEAP approach. So that's a really good question. Reese, anything else to add there?
Yeah, we did a survey before we launched around how are you getting started, and just to reiterate, our recommendations are based off the TCFD. So you know, the same disclosure pillars. We carried over 11, I think all 11 of the TCFD, and they were all 11 of the TCFD, and we added 3 where, you know, nature required. So the best way that we and in terms of that survey is starting with, as Chris has said, starting with what you already have. our recommendations say make one disclosure and build over time. They also recommend that you can, for organizations with different departments, jurisdictions, and kind of global footprint, starting with one area of your operation often can be. But what we're also finding is just getting started, doing that leap approach and getting started evolves into finding out lots more about other assets of your business. And so getting started means kind of just that. And I just popped into the chat our guidance on how to do that, from building internal buy-in to where can you start and making suggestions. But it must, we must reiterate, like, every business is different. Everyone will approach this differently. And so the way that we've designed those recommendations and the leap approach is to be flexible. And so that's kind of how we've approached it. But we are finding that a lot of organizations are going in through their experience with TCFD reporting.
Well, we are at the half-hour mark. I'm going to stay on. So if folks want to stay on and continue to discuss, Reese and Krista, if you have some time also to hang out, I'll be here. But for folks who are going to jump off right now, thank you for joining. And if you have any other follow-up questions, feel free to direct them to me. I could pass them along, and we'll also share out the slides and the recording after. Radhika.
Yeah, thank you for staying on for a little bit. I guess like what I want to build up on the point that you mentioned, that when people upload TNFD reports, like you do a little bit of screening to make sure like things are aligned. Do you have more information to share on what is the bare minimum that is needed for things to be called a TNFD aligned reporting or TNF or acceptable for TNFD? And I'm asking this because like all of the recommendations are there and they are published. But like as we're discussing, folks could be in different businesses could be in spectrum of where they are, even within their value chains. In some aspects, they might be very evolved, and in some aspects, like learning through the lead process. So, what is that threshold, that ground level threshold for things to be, or like what rubric are you using, or what framework are you using to categorize this is decent enough report and this is not?
So just to reiterate, we don't mark them or grade them, as you're saying. Like, we do review them. The technical team do review, and we say, is this aligned with the TNFD recommendations? Within the recommendations, it obviously says, becoming an adopter means starting with at least one of the core global disclosure metrics and reporting that, and increasing and stating how you're going to increase your ambition over time. That at the very minimum is a TNFD aligned disclosure, exactly the same way that that TCFD asked as well. So TCFD in the very beginning, back in 2017, said make one disclosure and increase that ambition over time. I wish I could fast forward until September, when our first annual status report comes out. We'll be analysing all of the reports that have been submitted, but also more reports. We know of much more than 50 out there, by the way. All the reports on the website are self-submitted. So we know of over 150 TNFD aligned reports that are in the market. We will be analysing those, and we'll be disclosing that information in our first annual status report. And there we'll be diving deeper into which disclosures have been made the most under which pillar, and then within which pillar, which of those specific disclosures under governance, strategy, etc. So a lot more information will be available in September. In terms of, and as I said, we're not, our role in the market is not to kind of be the judge and jury of these reports. That's really, and we can't be as well, because it's what's material to your organization. So every context is different, and as long as you follow the recommended guidelines in the TNFD recommendations, and it disclose at least one and increase that ambition over time, then that will be classified as a TNFD disclosure.
Thank you, very helpful.
And also I would reference back to the other standards and the GRI standards and the interoperability as well, because a lot of the data that you already report will be, in a lot of cases, is very much aligned with what we recommend. So in many cases, organizations are already disclosing, data points and metrics aligned with the TNFD recommendations. For instance, if you disclose information through the CDP platform, it's very highly likely that you're already making TNFD aligned disclosures. So I'd definitely go and look at how that is that works. And again, with the ESRS and FRAG disclosures and with GRI standards as well.
And to make it, just to add a little bit to that, Reese, to make it a little bit easier, we also have provided the ability to use mapping tables within your disclosure reports to make it that much easier. So you can reference the nature pieces through a mapping table.
And we
Good
can
question.
put into the chat. So what we found through our interoperability research was organizations didn't want to duplicate. You know, you might make you might report using GRI. How does that translate into TNFD? So that correspondence table, all you need to publish is a table. It's essentially a checkbox. I can put it into the chat as well, and that means that you're just showing your shareholders, your stakeholders, how that your existing disclosure reports align with the TNFD. So we're not in the market to make people double report or produce two separate reports. It's not what we recommend.
Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a question going back to nature transition plans from earlier. Do you have any like high level feedback or themes you could share about what particularly your asset manager constituency has shared about how they are already using this information or what information is most crucial? Definitely something we've talked about with climate transition plans in our group, but not so much nature transition plans.
Sadly, the consultation closed last week, so I believe the team are quite busy crunching the data. Nice. But there will be. I'll come back to you on that because we're just planning out what the pilot testing timelines look like. There will be a insights from the piloting webinar hosted, I believe, in July. But don't hold me to that date yet. It might change. So yeah, we can share more information on that, but the team are literally just analyzing the feedback at the moment.
Any other folks have questions? I've got one more I just got to ask you while you're here. Curious if you or any or other organizations are kind of tracking the ultimate impact of these disclosures. So yes, companies are disclosing on Nature now, but like what does that translate to on the ground? So yeah, curious if you're trying to quantify that at all, or if you know of other groups that are trying to do that.
This is the assurance piece, right? I don't know specifically of any organizations that are doing that yet, but maybe, Reese, have you heard of any specific teams that are focused on assurance?
No, not at the moment. I think you can see in the case study library, and I'll go back to this as well, if you're building those illustrative examples, trying to get internal buy-in, using those case studies is a really powerful way of kind of selling that piece internally, I guess, in terms of showing the opportunity side. So Bloomberg published a series of case studies on the opportunities of nature-related disclosures and reporting, and how companies who have gone out and made not alignment necessarily with the TNFD, but obviously very much based on the same concepts and foundations. And it's a series of 13 really incredible case studies of value creation and the kind of market opportunities of doing a leap assessment or similar, and disclosing kind of nature-related information to shareholders, for instance, how that's created opportunities. So I think that's probably a really good place to start, and that can be found in our case study library.
Awesome, thanks. Any other questions while we have Reese and Krista on the line? All right, well, thank you both so much for joining, and I look forward to hopefully collaborating on some things throughout the year and learning some of the insights from all the piloting work you're doing. So thanks so much.
It'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.